My name's Karen Green. I'm the librarian for graphic novels here at Columbia University. I did absolutely brilliant and insightful opening remarks yesterday that I will not repeat, but which will be available online within a week or two. So I'm just going to do some very fast housekeeping remarks and then turn things over to our first panel. But first I want to thank Jeremy Dauber and Danny Fingeroth here in the front row, my fellow organizers. Made this happen. After every panel, there'll be a half-hour break, during which panelists will be at the tables outside signings. There'll be books for sale through the Columbia Bookstore, set up right next to the signing table, so just line up, buy books, get signings, and enjoy. So that'll last for half an hour after the panel. On the signing table is a clipboard with a mailing list sign-up sheet. If you are interested in coming to further events about comics that we're going to hold here at the Columbia University Libraries, please feel free to sign up, and I will make sure you know. If you've got a program, the last 2 pages of the program have lunch information for the neighborhood. There's a lunch break from noon to 1:30, so go out and explore Morningside Heights. Please don't use flash if you want to take photographs, because it will be so painful for the panelists and the moderators. And we are videotaping. The fabulous Vin is in the back there doing video, and there will be video of all of these panels up and available, again, as I say, within a couple of weeks. So perhaps no holding your phone over your head for video and blocking the view of the folks behind you. I sound like a real librarian now, don't I? And shh, shh. Bathrooms are down 1 flight, women that way, men that way. And there's water fountains down there as well. We've got the Twitter hashtag up there, and in the event that you feel like tweeting. Some people sniggered audibly when I said that, but I just figured I would tell you. So enjoy this beautiful space. If you have a chance to walk into the rotunda, which is gorgeous, do so. This was the original library of this campus until we stripped out the space and had to move across. If you walk out the front door and look across campus, you'll see beautiful Butler Library, which is where the graphic novel collection resides, and now Chris Claremont's archives as well. So enjoy the rest of the day. I'm going to turn things over to Eddie Portnoy, who is going to take us through the first panel. Enjoy.
Hi. Thank you, Karen. Thank you for organizing. Jeremy, Danny, thank you as well. It's a great colloquia, symposia, whatever you want to call it. Okay, this is Periodical New York, and let me first introduce the panelists. We have, to your far right, Lauren Weinstein. She's a cartoonist who, according to her bio, is still recovering from having a baby, moving to the suburbs of New Jersey, which happened 2 years ago. Her comic books include Girl Stories and The Goddess of War, and her work has been published in Kramer's Ergot, The Gansfeld, an anthology of graphic fiction, and The Best American Comics of 2007 and 2010. Her work has also appeared in the New York Times, Glamour, and Hebe magazines. She's currently working on a sequel to Girl Stories, and her work can be seen at laurenweinstein.com. Next to her is Ben Catcher. His picture stories appear in Metropolis magazine. His new collection of weekly strips, The Cardboard Valise, was published by Pantheon Books in 2011. His most recent music theater collaboration with Mark Mulcahy, Up From the Stacks, which I saw and which is great, and if you have an opportunity to see it, you should. It was commissioned and premiered at the Coleman Center for Scholars and Writers at the New York Public Library and at Lincoln Center in 2011. He was the recipient of a Guggenheim Memorial Foundation Fellowship, a MacArthur Foundation Fellowship, was a fellow at the American Academy in Berlin and the Coleman Center for Scholars and Writers at the New York Public Library. He's an associate professor at Parsons, the New School for Design in New York City. Next to him is Emily Flake. She's an illustrator and cartoonist. Her cartoons have appeared in The New Yorker, Mad, and Canadian Business, which she refers to as Canada's premier humor magazine. Is that true? That is true, isn't it?
Humor with a U.
Oh, yes. Oh, thank you. That changes everything. Her weekly strip...
Talking about me yet?
Her weekly strip, Lulu 8-Ball, has been collected into 2 volumes. She's the author of a book called These Things Ain't Gonna Smoke Themselves. She lives in Brooklyn with her husband and small orange cat, and her work can be seen at eflakeagogo.com. Lastly, to my left, to your left, Erwin HASEN, the inimitable Erwin HASEN. Born in New York in 1918. He started his comics career in Marvel Mystery Comics #4, co-creating The Ferret. He jumped to DC in 1940, drawing the original Green Lantern and creating Wildcat with Bill Finger for Sensation Comics #1, and also worked on Justice Society and Wonder Woman comics. In 1955, he co-created the classic Dundee newspaper comic, which ran for more than 30 years. HASEN has taught at the Joe Kubert School for Cartooning for 25 years. He's the subject of a fascinating documentary, Irwin, A New York Story, and his graphic novel memoir, Loverboy, was released in 2010 by Vanguard Publishing. So please welcome them, and we will get started as soon as I figure out how to do this. Okay. These are sort of supposed to scroll. Oh, this is so different from. Okay. They're supposed to scroll through, but I'm not sure if that's going to actually work. Okay. They're scrolling. I don't have to do anything. Okay. I just had a few brief opening remarks. This is about New York and its periodical press and its relationship to cartoons. Obviously, cartoons wouldn't exist without the medium of the periodical press. And I just wanted to make a few historical remarks. For the first half of the 19th century, there were really very few images in American newspapers. As printing technologies improved just prior to the Civil War, publishers began to include more visual imagery. These images, as historian Gunther Barth observed, appealed to what he called the distracted reader, or readers who found the usual full pages of text broken up with images much more appealing and accessible. This phenomenon expanded readership, and by the 1880s, images were a common feature of newspapers. Cartoons, especially political cartoons, had also become common and often appeared on front pages. Magazines like Puck and Judge proffered numerous gag cartoons in every issue. In 1895, The Yellow Kid, widely regarded as the first comic strip, even though it really isn't a comic strip, it's not. I mean, it's a big single panel. That began appearing, and a phenomenon known as the comics exploded. Sunday funny pages were born, giving way to the daily funny pages. Cartoons would become a regular feature of the periodical press for over 100 years. They would also produce the major offshoot of comic books and eventually the undergrounds. And the major center of this was New York City. Now, what's interesting about this particular panel is we have, generationally, we have a wide array of people. So I'd really like to start with Erwin, because I think he may be the only one of an age that worked at a newspaper or spent time in a newspaper office. This is something that really essentially has disappeared because I think most cartoonists work at home or in studios. I'd like everyone to answer the question, but Erwin, I'd like to start with you. I'd like you to describe how you got into cartooning and whether or not being in New York had anything to do with that.
Me? I'm awfully sorry, but all my life I wanted to be an entertainer. And at my age now, I can't hear the sound of a lot of the voices. But I want to tell you something. I'll never forget the sound of clapping. You made me say that because I wanted to say something very smart, you know, exciting. But I did indeed wanted to be an entertainer first. And I'm in the book of DeWitt Clinton High School. There's a picture of me. I can't believe it. Because that's where I went to school. And I used to live around the corner from this college, this university, many, many years ago on 110th Street. And I always used to look at this big building as a little kid. And I said, what's up there on that street on 116th Street or whatever? And now I finally made it. And thank you so much for having me here. And as long as I don't have to answer questions too much, no, I can answer questions.
Okay, so Erwin, Erwin, the question I'd like you to, sorry, Erwin,
speak up.
The question I'd like you to answer is how you got into cartooning and whether or not living in New York had anything to do with that.
You better speak up.
Okay, here.
Take the mic. Go ahead.
The question is how you got into cartooning and whether or not living in New York City had anything to do with that.
I think, excuse me, living in New York City and being a cartoonist has nothing. There are the great cartoonists who came from the Middle West and little towns all over the country. They had nothing to do with New York.
Nothing about the atmosphere of the city?
New York had great bars. And they still do. Certainly do. What else?
So growing up in New York City, being surrounded by, I assume at some point you went to art school.
I went to art school. I went to the National Academy of Design, which was one of the great art schools of all the world in those days. Old-fashioned.
Okay, so did you go to the National Academy of Design?
National Academy of Design and
wait,
the Art Students League.
But did you do it to become a cartoonist?
No.
Okay, so...
No. My mother wanted me to be an artist. She didn't know what the hell I was doing. I was drawing pictures on the back of books. And she saw that. And this was during the Depression. We didn't have any money. We lost money. We were rich. We were actually wealthy. Lost everything. And that's the worst part. Having it, losing it. And we had to live hand to mouth, almost. But we had a lot of class. And my mother took me to the school and enrolled me. And I said to her, Mom, where are you getting the money? She said, don't worry, just go, be an artist. And I was an artist. I learned how to draw, not cartoons. And then I went to the Art Students League. And I met the most gorgeous people in the world, cartoonists who wanted to be artists. So the question is, why am I talking about being an actor?
That wasn't the question.
There was no question. I invented it. I think I wanted to be an actor, an entertainer, because I wanted to be loved. That's the answer.
Okay.
That's what it's all about.
Okay.
Oh, love me. Let me get up on the stage and I'll make you laugh. I'll make you laugh. And that's what all the entertainers you see are what it's all about.
Okay, Erwin.
Phil Sewell, go ahead.
Let's spread some of this love. Emily, can you address that same question?
What?
As far as whether or not being in New York has
right, if that at all plays a role,
same question for me. As far as how I got into cartooning, or
either or, if it's had any effect on your life.
I did not have the privilege of growing up in New York, so in terms of how that affected me.
Where did you grow up?
I grew up near Hartford, which is
that's not
nowhere near as good. It's
walk.
It's a really long walk, and I was an exceptionally lazy child. You know, I think in some ways, you know, not growing up in New York gives you sort of a fantasy life about what it's like to live in a big city, and you know, I mean, it gives you something to aspire to, and it gives you, I think, a necessary dissatisfaction with your place that also makes you become an artist, because it makes you fantasize, it makes you think about how, you know, how your life could be different and better. So I think that was more instructive than anything else in terms of how I became a cartoonist. And yeah, I too started making funny pictures because I wanted people to like me. So.
Wait, I didn't ask, are you involved in this?
I'm on the panel, yeah.
Oh, you're on the panel? Yeah. Somebody should have told me.
See, I have a sign and everything. I'm entertained.
Everybody on the panel is on the panel.
Okay, so Ben, could you address the same?
I think growing up in New York, actually, it was an edge. It's an edge. That we were lucky. I was lucky to live in New York.
Well,
And I've been, thank God, one thing I did in my life, if you want to hear about it, nothing serious. I went out with a lot of ladies. I loved women. And I was this big. But the greatest thing I did was to travel all over the world. I can say that without equivocation. My parents never went anywhere. They came from Russia, and they didn't go back.
Okay.
But they never traveled. They went up to the Alps, the Jewish Alps.
The Catskills.
The Catskills. They take me there, and I would draw newspaper cartoons for them. But where I got the idea, and this should go for everybody, traveling around the world for a little kid from New York City, I was the luckiest person in the world to be able to do it, to be able to go there. So I'm sorry, I didn't mean to get...
That's okay. All right, Ben, sorry, go ahead.
oh, what was it about? I'm trying to remember what this. Oh, about how New York affect. Well, you know, the periodical press by the time I got into it was a kind of narrow. You know, there were only a couple of papers in New York City and only a couple of weekly papers, so it was. You know, but still maybe one more than there would have been if I lived in Providence, Rhode Island. So, you know, I had that was the reality. Somebody would come to New York to start up a new weekly paper. And that's how, that happened in New York. I suppose it could have happened in other cities. But, you know, it was once a little wider field, and it became a very narrow, you know, monopoly. To have a newspaper, you needed some money. You need,
we had the greatest newspapers in the world.
Yeah, there were not. Yeah, by my childhood, there were just a handful left, and then in the weekly thing, The Voice dominated the weekly paper market, and then there was this thing, the New York Press started. But, I mean, after these underground papers that were talked about yesterday.
Right.
But, you know, there was enough media here so that you could, the odds of getting a strip in one of those papers was probably a little higher than in a smaller city.
Right.
But that's all. That's the only way.
Magazines, we also had great magazines.
Yeah,
The New Yorker, things like that.
Yeah, I don't know. I think I don't know what the statistics are, how many magazines are out of New York as opposed to the rest of the country.
The comic book pages
right.
is what everyone read in those days.
The
New Yorker
Sunday,
magazine, but the comic books, the comic strips. And the Sunday pages.
That's still, those are the biggest draws in newspapers, where in weeklies it was the comics, the horoscope and the sex advice column. Everything else was of no interest to most readers. They did a lot of studies, market research studies.
I never read books. A lot of you people, I'm sure, read books. I never read books. I wanted to be on the stage, be entertained. Read books? No. But I did indeed find a couple. A man named Stendhal. I don't know if you ever heard of that artist, writer. He was a very classical writer, like all the great writers of all time. And I picked up that book and I kept reading it. I don't know how by accident you make up these things. You get into those things. How come you're reading that stuff? That's heavy stuff. But I insisted. And I think that's part of, all of us should insist. I just made a very nice statement there. Insist. And I'm talking too much.
No, it's fine. But let's get to Lauren.
Cut me off.
All right, well.
Because I haven't talked like this in years, especially with
Really?
my wonderful throat. But
Wait, sorry, Erwin. Lauren at the end is. Take a look at the end, and you'll find Lauren. Here. Take a look down here at this woman.
yes,
She's going to say something.
I'm sorry.
Well, that's okay.
I'm talking too much. Go ahead.
I actively avoided New York City when pursuing an undergraduate degree. I knew I wanted to be an artist, and I thought I wanted to be a painter. And I actually got into Cooper Union, but I didn't go because I was scared of New York. I thought it would eat me alive, and I'm really glad I didn't. Now I teach at SVA, and I'm glad I didn't. I see what those kids go through. It's like they're up against so much, and I'm glad that I didn't have my undergraduate experience there. I went to St. Louis, and then when I got to New York, there was kind of a little weekly paper renaissance between The Voice and the New York Press. It seemed like there was a really good group in the late 90s of people getting weekly strips. And I actually did, it's a weird thing for me to be on this panel because I've never been in a regular New York periodical, but I got my first job in Seattle's The Stranger, where a lot of New York press people and Village Voice people like Tony Millionaire and Sam Henderson and Kaz, and they were all in The Stranger too. And it's interesting how that weekly job was the best cartooning training I could have ever gotten because I was forced to just spit something out every week and you just get better and better. And also the community of cartoonists was amazing, meeting all these different people that have kept me working all these years. And but then 9/11 happened. That's another big thing. And then a lot of the budgets for these papers were just scrapped. So like the Stranger's comic page, like a couple months after 9/11 was just done. So that was it, you know. And now I think a lot of strips are moving onto the internet. So that's where to see them, you know. So there's more of but I think there's still the community of cartoonists in New York that really binds people together. So.
Right. That interests me. This community of cartoonists. What can you describe what that is and how that functions?
It keeps you working because like there's not a lot that does sometimes. You know, it's like just knowing that there are all these people that are really. Like I lived on South 4th Street and in Williamsburg, and like right down the street from me was Ariel Schrag and Gabrielle Bell, and we like got together every week to make comics. That like there was this group that was started called Artists with Problems, and we'd just go and draw. And I recently had a kid, moved out to Jersey, but I still keep in touch with all those people, and it's really, really important just to, have those connections. I don't know.
Right, Ben. Do you have a similar situation, or did you when you were starting out?
No, I think the great thing about comics and newspapers was that the people who ended up reading your strip were not interested in comics as a form. They were looking for an apartment or looking at the sports results, and you didn't have this, you know, people who were just drawn just to the form. And that's the only place I found a readership. In the comic world, I mean, you know, the taste of most cartoonists would not connect with my work. And so that world didn't, that was not my audience.
I'm
know,
sure there's some cartoonists who enjoy your work.
Yeah, yeah, but I mean, not, you know, the mainstream comic world.
Right.
This was not the place this stuff could live. So it had to be in a newspaper.
Right.
That's where, or now in an architecture magazine where people are, you know, interested in architecture, and it's a form that you can talk about all these things, and it's not. I don't think it's the form itself that's particularly. It's a great form, but it's a multimedia. It's like theater. It's like movies. It's not. There's nothing intrinsically interesting in that. I mean, it's a form.
Right.
So it's, you know. But yeah, a community. No, I mean, all the people involved with Raw. A lot of them were in New York, or a few of them. I don't even say a lot. Maybe. Trying to think statistically, but there are I know cartoonists in New York, but
I mean, did you, when Raw was being published and you were being published there, did you interact with the people, or did you just go and hand in your strip and that
we had occasional reasons to socialize, but I can't say it was more of a community like of. By long distance, we all knew we were in the world working, but not, I wouldn't say it was a heavy social scene like you're talking about.
Right.
No.
Oh, sorry. Emily, do you have such an experience with, sort of a cartoonist community in New York or elsewhere that sort of
I
prompts
always like
you?
the idea of a cartoonist community because it sounds like some sort of like terrible commune where the plumbing doesn't work at all, but everybody's got cool pens. Yeah, I mean, I think in a lot of ways it's great to have it available to you, because there are a lot of people working in your field that you can sort of reach out to. Yeah, people who are cartooning.
If I may just digress for a second, which I've been doing all afternoon. I heard Stephen Job on television the other day, and I realized how fortunate I was to have lived in a world where there is no jobs.
Oy.
There's such a different idea of what humor is about, and talking about humor, talking. And I listened to this man, and he wants to change the whole spectrum of our society. That's what I think. That tells you what I'm all about.
Well, we don't have to worry about him anymore.
Yeah.
I don't want us to go away.
Okay.
That's all.
Go ahead, Emily.
Yeah.
That's what I see.
Okay, Erwin, we're going to let Emily finish what she's saying, and then we'll come to you, okay? We're going to let Emily's going to finish what she was saying, and then we'll come to you, okay?
Come here, wait. I'm sorry.
It's okay. She's going to finish what she's talking about, and then I'm going to ask you a question, okay?
Oh, I'm so sorry, darling.
No,
You know.
Sir. It's just no.
ahead. I'm sorry.
No, but again, it's having the availability of colleagues. But I think also it's just important to have a place that's as sort of consistently stimulating to the extent that you want it to be, as New York is. Like a place where you can just go out on the street and just be inspired visually. All the stories on the street, et cetera, et cetera. I think that's a very important thing. Whether or not you have like a technical community around you, I think just the energy of the place itself is very important. That's all.
Okay, thanks. Erwin. I'd like to know what kind of community of cartoonists did you work with during your career?
The best.
Can you describe that a bit?
Yeah. If I may, my favorite cartoonist was a sports cartoonist, Willard Mullen. Most of you have never heard of him. And then there was a man named Roy Crane. To me, he was the master. Let me tell you a quick story. He was the master. Buzz Sawyer was his strip. You people remember him, know of him? Yes. He was the master. Pointed nose, a little mustache, came from the South. No one ever saw him. He'd come up to New York on a convention. One day, I was invited with a group of others, Al Cap, a lot of cartoonists, to come to an auditorium, not just like this. And when I was a kid, I read his strip, this man, Roy Crane. And I'm sitting there while I was doing Gandhi, and he sat down, and a gentleman sat down next to me with a little mustache, and all he did was go like this. I like the way you're doing it. That to me was the highlight of my life for the rest of it. At one moment, I like the way you're doing it. It wasn't Stephen Jobs. I'm getting a little maudlin now. Is that the word? Maudlin?
That's a word.
Sorry. Forgive me today, because I feel like talking. So go ahead.
Okay. One thing I'm curious about is how, and if at all, New York City figures in your work.
Tell me, will you? I'm sorry.
It's okay, it's okay. I'm wondering how New York City figures in your work, if New York City appears in your comics as...
Well, with Gandhi, it was...
So explain.
Gandhi came as an orphan from Italy, and he snuck aboard a ship with his buddies from World War II. Got out of a duffel bag, and that's how it started. And I think that having him with his grandmother, multi-billionaire woman, etc., I don't know if you read Gandhi. That was the basis of the whole thing. And it was a combination of this little kid and the big world and the big New York. And the kid was a little Italian boy. I happen to love Italy. I love Italy. By accident, that's how the strip started. But other than that, I think that New York City was the word was a melting pot in every sense of the word. So that's about all I can tell you.
Okay. Emily,
I'm so sorry we can't do this without my throat.
It's okay. Emily, just curious, how does New York figure in your work?
I mean, I wouldn't say that my work has a particular New York locus per se. I mean, except insofar as working for the New Yorker, it's where a lot of my work appears. So I would say there's maybe sort of like there's like a miasma of New Yorkiness.
Miasma's a good word.
Thank you.
It's a hell of a good
You owe me
word.
50 cents.
I had one last night.
I don't know how to follow that.
Don't touch it.
Need some Purell.
You're smart. You're smart. Ash.
Thanks.
Smart ass. I'm kidding.
Wow. I just been shut up. Near Hartford?
Hartford, oh yeah.
Home of the smartass? Yeah.
Buffalo, I remember Buffalo.
Right.
Gandhi was in Buffalo.
Right. I may have run into him there.
That's right. No, he wasn't there walking.
Right.
He was in the paper.
Right. Yeah, so yes, general miasma of New Yorkiness with a, I mean, I try to, I try to hit a certain level of, I was about to say I try to hit a certain level of sophistication in my work, but that's a complete lie. I do a lot of fart jokes. I'm gonna pass that on.
I did one strip called The Jew of New York that was set in New York City in 1830, but and that New York I didn't know, and very different than the New York I knew. But Knipple and most of my other strips are set in a kind of reimagined city on the East Coast, maybe, of America, but not New York, because I have, there are a lot of historians and sociologists who've written about New York, and I didn't want to get involved in that, in those kind of real discussions about the actual place. I wanted to rethink it. So I gave, I don't even think it has a name. And so people who read it in Chicago said, well, maybe this is Chicago, and people who read it in Providence thought it was downtown Providence. So it's more about looking at a large urban center of the age of, 19th century city, but not New York. I mean, that's no place in New York. And New York is all built, and it was all imagined on paper. So that's what you could do in a comic strip. You can reinvent the city, make up your own subcultures and your own newspapers. That thing that went up, the Daily Pigeon, was a newspaper I invented, a cheap tabloid like the Daily Mirror. And then there's a newspaper in one of my books, The Evening Combinator, is a newspaper that reported the dream life of the city. And by some means, they had to report on people's dreams. So, yeah, it was a dream. It was more of an imagined city. It's not New York. I mean, I did the Jew of New York is specifically set on certain streets of New York, but in New York, again, that I didn't know. I just researched it. So that's where it...
Right, so your urban setting is a kind of mythic...
Well, it's an invention. It's based on things that did exist in different places, but also some other inventions.
Right. I find that interesting because I think in a certain way you're perceived as a very New York.
No, I don't know. People read it and assume that I know something about New York history. I don't really know. I know about the texture of a city, but I don't know much about the specifics of New York history or New York culture, even though I've lived here all my life. I just don't. I
mean, I assume you know something.
Yeah, but not. I'm not a historian of New York.
Right.
I mean, I know about my own invented city, but not the real thing. So right. And I think people mention Metropolis and Gotham, all these fictional cities in comics, and they say, well, that's New York, and I don't think it is. I think they're very purposefully alternative visions of a city. In the case of Superman, where Superman could exist. And when the Marvel comics that were actually set in New York, like Doctor Strange and the Fantastic
Spider-Man.
Four, there was something very kind of limiting about that they put it in the real city. Even though, well, Ditko's was kind of interesting, but, the Kirby New York City seemed a little sterile. It didn't feel like New York to me.
Right,
but
interesting.
So it's better to just, build your own city and go on from there, I think.
Right. Yeah. Okay, Lauren?
I think, for me, New York has always been this amazingly multi-layered place that you walk down the street and every single block, a million things happen and a million ghosts live in this corner, and you don't really know what happened, but you can feel it in some way. And so I feel like the times that I've used New York in my comics, like that one, that's like the Williamsburg Bridge, and I did that one. That's like kind of, that's a bunch of bridges. I put a couple
Something's
together.
going on back of me, yeah.
But I did that one actually after a friend.
Who did that?
I did.
She did it.
Gentleman?
No, the woman at the end.
I made this comic.
Great.
Thanks. Well, so that one I did when a friend commits suicide. And so I just did this comic about, I don't know, like this feeling of like these ghosts.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
And then the other one.
Lovely.
Thank you. Thanks a lot. Then there's one, and it can keep flipping. I don't know if you'll be. This one I did. It's actually based on a park in Brookline, Massachusetts, but I included it because there's the city.
Sorry.
There's the city country thing, like all these lives going on in a public space all at once, time passing and things like that. That was the thing I did. And then, in like dreams of, and then this one is directly based on places where you could still get a blowjob in my rapidly gentrifying neighborhood. Like this is just true. Like there wasn't anything. It's like exactly true. And then this one, that other one, this one was about being in Central Park and seeing a guy that looked like the guy that I was talking about before that commits suicide, and he looked like that guy. And I don't know if you've ever had that experience before where you see somebody else and they just seem like and this one's called Borrowing Your Body, and I feel like public spaces are full of that. You always like look at all these people from these different, who are, I don't know, just the experience you have of walking in Central Park. It's like this, people have been having this experience for years and years of just people watching and it triggering different thoughts and memories and stuff. So.
I wanted to say something about your strip, Ben, because I read that in the Baltimore City paper in the '90s, and I think that your strip more than any other strip sort of formed my idea, so my sort of fantasy life idea of New York, even though it was never like explicitly about New York, just as it sort of formed this vision of a place where decades sort of collapsed in on each other, into this sort of timeless world, and the site-specific weirdness of New York. It's just a place where the soil has its own particular DNA, and only things that happen here that can only happen here. I feel like that sort of set the tone for what I thought New York would be like. And then I got here and it was totally boring.
The other thing is, I love to be in strange cities, so the idea of having to construct a strip every week about New York would just wouldn't interest me enough. And so I had to invent a place I didn't know, and I could sort of say, what's around this corner? And, it's full of specificity, but it's not something a historian can now go back to and say, I spoke about this place that was in New York. I mean, it doesn't work like that. So it's, and I think all the fantasies of urban life are just that. Somebody makes them up, and then you either read about them or you experience it yourself. And anyway, you only know the New York that you know. There's a million New Yorks. Sure. If you move in the Dominican music circles, you're in some other world. And if you move in the Yiddishist circles, you go to other places. So there's not, it's such a dense place. But anyway, it had to be like a touristic pleasure for me every week. Otherwise, I would just feel very hemmed in by having to talk about. I'd be competing with the metropolitan section of the Times, so I didn't want to do that.
But Ben, don't you think your work is, I don't know, it seems almost like that fictional truth kind of thing, like the essence of the city. I would say I don't know.
I don't know. Yeah, but it's not. It's people felt that about cities all over the country.
Yeah.
They said you really captured downtown Providence, and I'd never been there. So, it's a fantasy. It's 19th century, industrial, the end of the industrial era. That's what it's about,
Right.
and it's a specifically kind of an East Coast. I don't think people out on the West Coast confused it. It's an East Coast
But
kind
you said
of city.
Chicago.
In Chicago they did, yeah. It ran in Chicago. People thought, they said this must be
Right, so
but
it's-
I mean, why I invented my own streets and my own businesses because I specifically did not want to talk about real things. But the thing is, when you talk about real things, you become a journalist, and then you get sort of involved with real people and their reactions to it. And I mean, fiction can just avoid all of that. And even on the grand scale, I didn't even want to be in New York. So,
But I think as a newcomer or an outsider to New York, there's like the delightful improbability of all the things that you see on the street is very similar to the delightful improbability of the things in your strip, So, and
that's urban life of
Right.
the 19th, maybe even late, 19th, 20th century. But that could be many. The thing is, the cities are man-made or human-made things, so they're inventions, and you can, on paper, reinvent it.
Right.
And that's what interests me, how you can, refocus the city and talk about things on a level a historian can't even get to. Because,
Right.
internal idea. I mean, all these things you can't find out. You can't discover as a historian or a sociologist. It's sort of a limit.
Right.
So
it's-
fiction lets you go into all these
Right, you just invent your
strange places.
You invent,
right?
you invent your own. Okay, should we take questions? Yes?
Lauren,
Okay.
beautiful.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
Beautiful.
We're going to take questions now. So if anyone has some, please step up to the mic. Go on. Go ahead. Well, actually, can you step up to the mic because they want it for the video?
Question for Emily. Have you ever done strips? I'm familiar with your cartoons, but have you ever done strips about scenes in the city or New York City or other cities?
Not really, actually. I don't generally have like a site-specific thing in my work, basically because I'm really bad at drawing perspectives, so I try to keep it pretty interior. But no, not to any major extent.
Okay, and another to you also. I recall you mentioned you lived in Argentina for a while. What was the vision in that country of New York as a city?
I think, well, in Buenos Aires there was sort of like a sense of, like, oh, we're totally similar, like, because I mean, Argentina likes to sort of pretend it's not in South America, so there was definitely a sense of like, oh, we get each other because we're both big cities.
But that was you. That before. Beautiful.
Did I do
Out
something?
of town here.
But and there's a wonderful comic scene in Argentina. There's a lot of really amazing work going on there, and those artists definitely look to the New York scene. I mean, they're really into your work, Lauren, and they love Chris Ware. They love it was not New York, but they have a very good understanding of the New York comics scene there. But they're also, if any of you feel like checking it out or speak Spanish, I'd get into it.
Go ahead.
An observation from the 2 days as a listener participant, how eagerly yesterday some panelists, particularly in the political one, embraced the idea of cartoonist, comic artist as journalist, and why today it isn't embraced. And I appreciate both points of view, and it occurs to me too that the impulse for some to be a documentarian is one thing, but the other impulse to be an imaginative artist is something also. So, sorry, just an observation rather than a question, but if anybody would like to comment, if anybody pushes you in one direction or another and why you might resist being pushed. And for instance, people might think you're a documentarian, but you're not.
Yeah, oh, I'm sorry. Well, you're asking about why we went away from journalism?
No, simply that the medium, the form, your work of the many people who've appeared on the panels embrace both being, say, a documentarian, journalist, or being an imaginative artist. And as a fan of comics, I'm just grateful that both of those are possible.
Yeah. Well, I think one is this more kind of utopian idea that you can invent something that sits beside the world as you see it. So when one wants to record the world, you see it. There's that you see in front of you. So, you know, that's, I mean, a lot of my strips in Metropolis are about things that could exist in the world or should exist, but there just seems to be a lot of writing about documenting the world. It seems very well documented, so there's room for that other kind of speculative fiction and, you know, trying to look at alternative worlds, realities, and so that's my impulse, I think.
Okay, Danny?
Irwin, I know for your generation, kind of the ultimate thing to have was a newspaper strip. Can you hear? Is it better if I don't use the mic?
You know what?
Irwin,
come to him.
Yeah.
Come here, come closer.
I know it was a big deal for people of your generation to get a newspaper strip. That was sort of the ultimate thing.
That was.
Can you talk a little bit? I know you did the Goldberg strip.
Yes.
And then how did that lead to Dondi? And what did Dondi mean to you in your?
The Goldberg strip, by the way, thank you for interrupting my silence. The Goldberg strip, I got by accident. I got out of the Army. I had a wonderful stint in the Army because I became alive again. And I became the editor of the newspaper, Fort Dix, New Jersey. And then I had a chance to do the Goldbergs. And the New York Post was one of the first liberal newspapers in the country. And it was Dorothy Thackeray owned it. And I got a chance to do the strip. And I met the most exciting woman I've ever met in my life, Gertrude Berg. I'm sure maybe some of you heard of her. Brilliant. And I did the strip, I did the drawing, and I was able to draw at the office down in the Worth Street, the New York Post. And this was just before Franklin Roosevelt died. And Gertrude and I became friends. She's a brilliant, wonderful lady. And I met her secretary over the time, and secretary called me. This is a very quick story. And she said, Irwin, Gertrude's having a birthday. Would you come down to the hotel, forgot the name of the hotel, and join us for a drink? And I said, my God, are you kidding? She was a very big lady in television at the time. And we sat down, the three of us, secretary and myself, and a young man comes in the door from the street, and she says, Frank! She said, Frank, this is Erwin Hazen, he's a cartoonist. Irwin, this is Frank Sinatra. I give him, shake hands and this and that. Tall, skinny young man. Just came over from across town from the Paramount Theater, where he was playing to the hundreds of girls, all the young kids. That was another time. I just had to bring this story up. And Sinatra shook hands and said, Jesus, you know, I gotta run. And she said, oh, Frankie, like a Bronx mother. Frankie, go, go. And I'll never forget that moment, which I just had to let you see. The dichotomy of that woman from the Bronx and Sinatra from Jersey City. How they got together. How they got to be friends at all. Yoo-hoo, Mrs. Bloom, and Frank Sinatra. My favorite all my life. But I just had to bring that up. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I didn't mean to digress, because I'm sorry my back is to this beautiful drawings. I've never seen, because that's the kind of drawings I love. And thank you, girls. Really, I mean it. Because I was sitting here looking at these ugly faces. And this is gorgeous. It's the kind of drawing that I love to do when I'm not drawing. That's all.
Do we have any more questions? Go ahead.
I want to know what Ben Catchor's dreams are like.
What did he say?
He wants to know what he...
Is that Jeffrey? No.
I want to know what his dreams are like.
I don't remember them very often. So,
Is that good or bad?
What?
What does he mean?
What my dreams are like?
You have dreams, a lot of dreams?
No, I don't. I do. I know I do, but I don't remember them.
I missed you in the conversation.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
I rarely remember them, and you know, I think that's it. I never trained myself to. Once in a while, I do, and they're very. They don't have a structure that makes them of much use to me. I don't know. They're these kind of. You know, things I could make up in my conscious life. They don't. So you know, I often write when I'm just before I fall asleep. So I'm very conscious of that half awake state, and where I'm still able to think of stories, but not full dream. It's a little out of my control. So I don't. For some reason, I've never tried to use dreams. But.
Okay, last question, please.
To Irwin, are you aware?
Yes.
Are you aware of Dondi, the graffiti artist, and do you feel your work has inspired his?
What did he say?
Are you aware of Dondi, the graffiti artist?
I can't hear you.
There's a graffiti artist named Dondi.
Yes, I heard of him.
And so, is he inspiring? Or you feel like you've inspired him, or do you have some interest in him?
I never met him. The best part of that kind of a story is I'm sitting on a bus, Lexington Avenue bus, and there was a little colored boy running through this bus, and his mother said, "Dondi, will you sit down?" I'll never forget that. "Dondi, will you sit down?" I didn't go over to her and say, "That's my boy." Anyway, that's all. I'm giving you little tidbits because I can't talk a lot.
Okay. All right, thanks very much. Please thank our panel and.